Welcome to the 12-Step Recovery Evolution podcast. Visit recoveryevolution.co.uk for more episodes, helpful resources and links to our social media. Also visit the site for information on how you can attend a future Zoom session or workshop live. Thank you.
Morning everyone, good to see everybody this morning, good to hear everybody's check-in and good to see everyone's doing all right. Again, I think that's one of the things that you realise when something starts. You know, in my life I've always been an overreactor because I'm always very sensitive and a lot of emotions I've been sitting on most of my life. So my first reaction is usually angry and frustration and I used to, as things unfolded, and most of them emotions were kind of pointless. And I started to think, you know, as the years went on, that, man, I must have wasted a lot of emotion on pointless things that never even happened. And they probably wore me out emotionally. And then I watched that film, The Marigold Hotel, and I like that saying in there where, again, he kind of explained that when they said, look, it'll be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. And I kind of like that because that meant to me that if I can reserve all that emotion that I put into the beginning of the process and just wait for it to unfold, then usually it turns out completely different than I initially expect it to when I do my foresight using fear and anger and past ideas and past experiences, and it's nice just to relax and let life unfold. So even today we're in a different place. Nobody's ever been here before. You know, the world's never been here before, not that we're aware of. And that's why I'm so glad for this program, to be able to practice it and have it become a working part of my mind, because it helps me to answer whatever happens in my life. Because that's one thing I've learned in long-term recovery. I just don't know what's going to happen next. And new things happen that I've never dealt with, and it can cause a bit of turmoil. But again, I've got a process through the program that helps me to figure out how to respond to it in a correct way and have a better relationship with whatever happens to me, even some of the difficult stuff. So, you know, it's a good thing to learn, and it's a good thing to say to people. It'll be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. Calm down, carry on. So this is a Q&A. So hopefully based on what we've been talking about over the last few weeks, or any, you know, realizations that you've come to yourself, or, you know, anything that you want us to clarify. And, you know, I listened back to some of these podcasts myself, and I was just telling folks this morning, it's only when you're actually sitting here in front of a screen and sharing your experience, some of the things that I say I've never heard before myself. And it's not until you're in this kind of situation with this sort of dynamic and with these questions, things that when you're actually talking, things come out of you. It's like, I've never heard myself say that before. And some of it are quite like. And again, I think life's like that. When different things happen, it brings different things out in you. And then as you go along and then look back, when I look back now, I've got all this information in my mind. I've got all this new experience. I've got all these new understandings, and I've never had them before. So when I go back and look, I have a very different understanding of what I thought however many years ago. So it's just a bit of an ongoing journey. So it's an opportunity for you guys to ask questions or tell us anything that you want to say. So we'll open up the mic. Not all of them, but anyone want to ask a question, stick your hand up, and Fox will unmute you.
Thanks, Fox. Yeah, Lester, I wanted to ask this question the other day, but I got in too late, and it's sort of been on my mind. And what I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned the other day, I think it was the day before yesterday, that in your first 5 years you was running around helping everyone, and then you said after 5 years you got to this point where you like wanted to explode inside, right? And yeah. What I wanted clarification on was, had you been through the steps? Had you been through the process in them first 5 years?
No,
Ah,
no,
right.
only up really step 5 really. So I
Yeah.
hadn't actually completed the steps, and I think we talked about that in the podcast that we did about the 12 step. We haven't put it out yet because I just wanted to see how controversial it was. So I think
Yeah.
me and Fox were going to put a little bit of a disclaimer at the beginning of it because, again, I do speak quite boldly and, don't want to kind of blanket everybody with certain stuff. I'm just trying to share ideas more than be politically correct, if you know what I mean. But no, mate, I think what I was doing a lot of meetings, doing a lot of step work, not a lot of step work. I was doing a lot of helping people. For that reason, mate, I just realised that I felt better when I was helping people. So it was like kind of a selfish thing, really. Everyone's going how wonderful and how kind you are, but the truth is, it was just making me feel better. That I just felt better down, down the day centre with the homeless people than I did sort of being at home with my family or being in normal social situations or being at work on building sites. I just felt really uncomfortable when I wasn't helping people and being around people. And I think, again, I think when that podcast comes out about the 12 step, if you have a good listen to that, mate, that really will answer. Because, one of the things I was trying to show in there was that was a pivotal point and I say this, I used to help people to get out of self. See, when I'm actually helping you and thinking about you, it's kind of stopping me thinking about myself. But then when I did the steps and the steps started to reduce myself, then the need to help people to get out of self wasn't the same. And I realised that I used to help people to get out of self. But then as I started to work the steps, then I started to help people because I was out of self. And that is a massive difference because you don't really grow when you're helping people to get out of self. You just get relief and that's all you kind of get. Of course you get certain other experiences, but it was only when I actually started to help people when I was doing the steps, I noticed that I started to grow spiritually. I started to get a different understanding of God. I started to feel the nearness of the Creator. And then, the truth is, even then, I noticed that, I used to go and help people and I couldn't wait to go and tell people I was helping the homeless because they go, oh, that must be really rewarding and really great. And go, yeah, well, actually it is. And, I did kind of want everyone to recognise what a wonderful person I was, only because I had such a low self-esteem. Then I noticed as I went on, that become less and less important to me because that need to be validated by other people started to become less and less for me because I was starting to feel that union with the Creator. So that do you see the difference there? I do. It's the same thing, but there's a big difference.
Yeah,
Again,
can I just share my experience quickly? Is that like what I noticed was being in this isolation is that so I've gone through the steps like with you lot in treatment a couple of times, and then I went through them again with my sponsor, and then basically like my routine before this lockdown, right, was very grateful to you guys, like volunteering a lot at the rehab and on my college stuff as well, and the meetings, but like. I can definitely relate to that, helping people to get out of self and then helping people like because it's good to help people. Like I'm not doing it to get out of self. But then when I was in lockdown and lockdown started and I wasn't able to go and do that same stuff, I really started to notice that there's still a lot of shit there. Do you know what I mean? There's still a lot of shit that's coming up that weren't coming up when I was going out and helping people every day. And do you know what I mean, Lester? So it's almost like...
It all comes down to getting out of self. Remember, self is the root of the problem. So whether we're using drugs or using people, and again, I try not to get too controversial because without sort of having a big discussion about it, I know people can take what you're saying and twist it into something that it's not. But, look, the biggest thing that's being used on planet Earth is other people. his children, his other friends, family. You know, when we stop using drugs, it's very to start using other people. Because remember, look, what makes us alcoholics and addicts sort of physically is that we're adults that have lost the ability, or may never have had it, to adjust and control our emotional states. Now, self is the root of our problem. That's the suffering is coming from ourself. But if I can't control my emotional state on the inside, then I have to control it on the outside. So even most of your friends are probably not really your friends, but they are probably people that don't upset your emotional state. And the people that upset your emotional state, spiritually speaking, are probably more your friends are more valuable to you learning about yourself, and then people that are willing not to challenge you or tell you anything you're doing anything wrong. They're there to support you no matter what bullshit warrant you want stamped. You know, they're going to help you be comfortable in your unhealthy self. And if we have no way of getting out of that, that's kind of what most people are looking for. Again, this is my experience that most people are not trying not to be dysfunctional. Most people, because it's very difficult to try to stop being dysfunctional, because especially if you're in a dysfunctional family and then you rock up and go, Mum, Dad, I don't want to steal anymore. You're going to probably get greeted with, who do you think you are? You think you're better than us? So becoming trying to make an effort to be not dysfunctional in a dysfunctional environment, you're going to start standing out. If everybody turns up at work late in your family and you start turning up on time, you're going to start making them look bad. That's the way they're going to see it. And so most dysfunctional people aren't actually trying to not be dysfunctional. They're actually trying to learn to live with the dysfunction. I mean, that's pretty deep, and that's more what I've learned about as I've gone on in my recovery. So, you know, look, we're all still going through it. I mean, I'm going through it. You know, today, somebody yesterday was going, oh, does it get better the longer you're around? It's like, well, not really. You just get sort of closer to the core of the problem, which becomes a lot more uncomfortable. But the difference is I'm actually more capable of dealing with that problem now than I've ever been in my life. And so the good thing and the kindness, I think, again, I think somebody mentioned step 7, look, when it says, you know, we hand over the good and bad. Well, when I first heard that, I think, good and bad? What do you mean good and bad? I didn't think God wanted to have the good and the bad. I thought he just wanted the bad, not the good. And I've realised that over the years, it's like some of that problems that I still have, it's taken me nearly this long to get close to the root of it. But I also realise I've never in my life before been capable of dealing with this problem that I'm dealing with now. And it's still difficult and it's still a bit traumatic and it's still a bit disturbing, but not, you know, it's contained. It's not out of control. I'm not going around biting and shouting and screaming at people. I mean, even though that can happen. But learning over the years to work this program and all them other issues has now qualified me to start tackling some of the real big core issues that I have. And it's a kindness by God, I think, to allow me to grow before too much is asked of me. Does that make sense? But it is very deep, isn't it? And I think we could do probably a whole week on that stuff. But, you know, it's a process, mate. And it's the fact that you're in the process, that's the important bit, because you're going to develop then. You're not going to develop if you're not in the process. But John, you're developing because you're making, again, you're trying to work this program. You're trying to learn it. You know, and I promise you, next year, you're going to look back and you go, blimey, what I know now, probably I only knew anything last year. But that's the way it kind of is. You just keep trying and you keep working and you develop and you get better at it. And each time you get better at it, it kind of qualifies you to deal with the next thing. But I don't think there's any end. I've not come to any end. I've just become a little bit more able to tackle some of the bigger issues in life.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks, mate.
Okay, mate.
Thank you, John. Up next, I've got Siobhan.
Hiya.
Siobhan.
really just sort you just sort of answered it a little bit, the question that I was going to ask. I think like touching on that dysfunction stuff, that's like rife in my family, and the bit that I struggle with, which I'd like to ask you, I suppose, is do I ever get any relief from that? Is that even though I've got an awareness, like I feel like each year I'm developing, like in the beginning, if the dynamic between me and my mum is like complete codependence. So I feel like in the beginning of my recovery, if I had an argument with her, I'd wake up with like a fear blanket, completely unable to breathe, that she'd not responded to my text, or that me and my mum wasn't speaking. And as the years have gone on, I feel like I don't feel that towards my mum. After having a dispute or a disagreement, I've not got that blanket of fear. But where I struggle is I don't know, even though I've got an awareness around my mum's unable to give me what I turn to her for because of that show, is there ever a point that I'll stop turning to her, if that makes sense?
Yeah, because I think again, the first thing, it is a process, as you know, Siobhan, and I think it's a difficult process, and I honestly think that's why most people subconsciously don't want to take the journey. That's why I say it's like the road less travelled, and why I think people don't often really want to engage in the program, because it's going to start making you have to deal with some of your uncomfortable self, which is obviously quite traumatic. And so subconsciously, conscious tells us it's better to stay away. Remember that self is all about, getting us out of problems. It's not an unloving thing, your ego. It's mostly trying to say, look, let's just get me out of problems in the next 15 seconds. It's got no long-term goal. It doesn't think of other people. So, when you've been sort of brought up in that kind of dysfunction and that trauma, it often makes sense. Well, I'm not going to go and poke the hornet's nest. Yeah. And unfortunately, dysfunction's kind of like that if you've got people that also are hurt around you and you start trying to connect with them in a different way, you're going to release that hurt, and it's going to be aimed at you, which is going to say, get away from me, you're hurting me. So when we want to get close to each other, it's very hard to get close to hurt people, because it actually hurts them. And that's the same, with your mother or with the children, that if you're hurt and they're hurt, we learn not to get close. So, it's always the spiritual malady. It's always this we can't get close. What we really want is relationship, but the hurt people can't do the relationship. So we learn to have a relationship at this sort of distance. Yeah. And then if we go this close, then the hurt comes, you get rejected or they get angry. It's to push you away from each other. So it's difficult, but I think what starts bringing some relief is, one, you learn not to go too close. So you learn some boundaries, but then boundaries shouldn't be so rigid. We should be able to move them. And that's something that we have to learn. Again, this stuff is the road less travelled, especially I can see in England. It's not what we really talk about, because it is so overwhelming. And again, if you really understand this stuff, if you don't wake up screaming, you're probably not understanding it. It's very traumatic, but it's worth starting the journey. So learning to have some more boundaries and giving them some boundaries, and realising the actual fact, when I go too close or I become too demanding from them, which I probably will, and I probably will do that when I'm needy, when I want something from them, when I'm feeling low, I'm naturally going to want to head towards my mother or my children or my wife, or, and when I'm going to them with this hurt, then it's probably going to trigger the hurt in them, and then they're going to, so it's learning some boundaries is the beginning, and then that also sets up a nice structure to then begin to, if I don't go too close, then we can keep a good dialogue going, and that allows us. Now, this is the real key, I believe, is learning to and have a better quality of communication. Shouting, screaming is not a good quality of communication. So I believe that we know that all good relationships are based on good communication. That means I need to be able to tell you how I feel without the fear of being attacked. And then I need to be able to listen how you feel without attacking you. And then as we keep doing that, eventually we should come to some agreement with each other that we can then have better communication and a better relationship. So one is the boundary.
Yeah.
And I think Eleanor may be able to give you a little bit more confirmation of this, but a boundary is important. And then once we've got some good boundaries established, then we can improve the quality of communication. So there's two things to work on.
Yeah.
And then I think the third thing, and the most important thing, is to try and accept yourself.
Right.
Because we're trying to get their acceptance when we're in that state, I believe. But when you're in that feeling like that, even when you're not being lovely and wonderful, then you should still try and accept yourself and not accept your behaviour, that your behaviour is good. But when you're behaving badly, is to try and find ways to learn to accept and love and nurture yourself. And that may be different from everybody. So there's a lot more, but I think them three things are really good to write down and learn to practice. And now just would like Eleanor, if she's there, to jump in and maybe if she could add anything or validate what I'm saying a bit.
Yeah, very much, Lester. I think what comes to my mind when I hear that is that if we think about when we use drugs and alcohol to make ourselves feel better, because we don't know how to balance our internal world ourselves. If we think about, if we liken that to when we try and use another person to make ourselves feel better, that's when we get an unhealthy relationship. So if I'm coming to someone I love or someone I'm relating to and looking for a response that's going to make me feel better, chances are it's going to have the same amount of success as it would if I was going to use alcohol or drugs. I need to already feel okay so that I can then have a relationship with that other person, not based on what I can get from them. And the biggest, it's just the same as with other substances and other externals. We don't know, we don't realize that that's what we're looking for. So we can be, it's very easy to be in denial. Oh no, it's just because I'm nice and I like to do the right thing, or it's just because I want to have a good relationship. It's really, really hard to recognize that slight sort of the self-seeking element of that relationship. And we have to be really careful. So Lester's absolutely right. If we work the program and continue to work on ourselves and our own self-worth and our own self-esteem, we will notice a shift in that we won't be looking to externals to get our needs met. We won't be looking to externals to make ourselves feel okay. And our relationships with others, the tension will drop out of them. Our responses will change. So it's about not trying to change the people that we're in relationships with, not trying to necessarily change the relationship, but trying to change our relationship with ourselves. And the rest will just naturally come. Is that, I don't know.
Thank you, Eleanor. No, that's brilliant. And just for you guys that don't know, Eleanor, she's a highly qualified therapist, unlike myself. And so you can take that to the bank. I think it is a hard thing, again, because it doesn't always make sense that it says the world and the other people were quite often wrong, and that can be a bit of a barrier. That the other people may be wrong, but it's still when you change yourself that it actually starts to change the relationship with them. But ultimately, what makes us alcoholic and addict is that we can't balance or control our own emotional state within inside ourselves. Again, when you're trying to change your mum, you're trying to brush the mirror. and then you keep looking in the mirror and your hair's still messy. It's when you learn to brush your hair that the mirror changes. But again, it's a journey. There's no, it's still an ongoing journey. Sometimes you think you're doing well because you're becoming like the Waltons, and then everybody kicks off and you don't talk for a couple of years. It is a bit of a journey. I wish it was like, my sponsor's wife at the beginning said, "You're never going to be like the Waltons," and it really broke me little heart because I like the Waltons. I still like to watch the Waltons, but the truth is we ain't the Waltons. But, we've come a long way, and all of them relationships are at different stages. But again, they're not all, would appear on the surface to be wonderful, but at least I'm comfortable. Not comfortable is not the right word, because doing the right thing can be uncomfortable. Doing the right thing can make you have a blooming panic attack if you've never done it before. It's really hard. It's really hard to give my dad a hug, and when I hugged him, he went like a plank. It still does. It's not that easy for him, and it's not easy for me. Even like, in meetings when they're hugging people, I'm not always sure it's a good idea to go and grab people. Because some people, that's really not pleasurable for them at all. It's always good to ask. But the same with family. Some of them not happy about you grabbing them. You may have noticed.
Hiya. My
Okay.
question's about, we talked a bit earlier in the week about having a good sponsor. And you did say that, you can have, there's a lot of people who are good people and kind people, but doesn't necessarily make them a good sponsor. And I suppose it brought back the question to me myself, because I'm only 2.5 years sober and I'm sponsoring a couple of people. Some fears there whether I was a good sponsor or not. And I suppose as a sponsor, I try to bring everything back to the program and to the principles. But I wondered if you had sort of any advice, especially for people who are like, not that long into their sobriety, but who are sponsoring, as to sort of what makes a good sponsor.
Well, again, I think me and Dan Esra can actually try and do a podcast on that, because again, it's like sort of a bit controversial, and at any point of that conversation, everybody else in the world can say, "Who do you think you are? And who made you?" Sorry, so it's always everything you say. It is quite. I want to be, as balanced as possible. I don't want to offend anybody, but there is, I believe, there is certain truths. And some of them truths are kind of like this. Look, if you're brought up in a really dysfunctional family, are you going to grow up as a functional kind of person? But if you're brought up in a really functional family, are you going to grow up to be really dysfunctional? I probably doubt it, or the chances are pretty remote. So again, I think it's the same with sponsorship. It's like, if somebody hasn't used drugs in 24 hours, then the person that's just come in, you can tell them how to not use drugs for 24 hours. And you may be able to stay one day ahead of them, but what I've learned over the passage of time is that some of that experience has to be experienced multiple times before you understand it. And that's why, but how many times till it's actually relevant to the other person is, as long as a piece of string. So, it is a kind of a controversial thing. It's kind of also like that, isn't it, with children? Look, when I was young, I used to steal cars. And I loved it, and it was fantastic. And I loved everything about it. It was just, but would I tell somebody young to steal cars? I wouldn't. I would tell them not to do that. It's wrong. And so, and I don't know where that comes in with sponsorship. I think the point I'm trying to make is that when you're early around, it can be less intimidating asking somebody who's also not been around long to be their sponsor. And I do sometimes think the reason for that would be is that you're going to get away with a little bit more and you're probably going to get a little bit away with a bit less than somebody been around for a little while. And you know, we try not to be like that. I tried to be when I'm sponsoring people. I tried to be as kind of flexible as I can, but sometimes I find things are a little bit too difficult for me. I'd say this. So after going around the houses there, I'd say this. One, if you're looking for a sponsor, I think you should make sure that they've not just done the steps or doing them, but they've got a reasonable understanding of the steps. Two, I think you should look into their life and see if they've got what you're looking for. And I'm not going to put a time on that. I'm going to leave that right there.
Good morning. Going back to your 5 years, the first time I got sober for 5 years, I did exactly like you. I did volunteer work around drugs and alcohol, CAF and everything, but I didn't have a sponsor. So within 5.5 years, I was back out there. Now, I recently have let go of my sponsor because she's not really helping me. I had a bit of drama couple of days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and yesterday, and I'm coming to 3 months sober, and I'm able to not pick up a drink. But I did bring my sponsor, the sponsor I'm meant to have yesterday, to tell her what's happening, but she wasn't very supportive. So, you know, it just made me feel flat. And you say, what's the point in having you if you can't even give me advice? So what do I do from here, Lester?
Well, again, I think this is a bit of a problem that may exist in the fellowship, and that's sort of a conversation that hopefully we can have with Dan and maybe hash it out a little bit, because is that, look, a sponsor isn't, you know, we seem to esteem people that sponsor us quite a lot, you know, almost like some spiritual guru. And, you know, they're not really that. I mean, you know, most of us in the fellowship have got our own problems, and,
Yeah,
you know, we're doing our best. And, you know, I think it takes a good 4 years to straighten your head out. You know, I was taught it takes 2 years for your body to recover and 4 years to get your head straightened out, but nobody likes the 4-year mark. I think where the dysfunctions involved in it, I think if you're actually working on it, it can take up to 10 years to straighten some of that out. Like in my experience, again, nobody wants to hear that because they're like, 10 years, but you get better on the way. But I do think you shouldn't esteem your sponsor too much. You know, they're just people as well. So I think really it's the danger of putting too much stock into any one person, which is why I really do like to promote the big book, because, you know, the big book's really not a person. But you need to work it out for yourself and work on it yourself, hopefully with the direction of other people that have done that. But I've always been a very resentful person. I've never had a sponsor I didn't resent, you know, or question or query. And, you know, I've had in my life probably 3 sponsors up to date. They keep dying on me.
That was the first sponsor I ever had.
Yeah, but I could give you a big list of all. Could give you a big list of all of their problems and their defects. But I learned to look a bit past that. And for me, the most important thing about these, you know, again, they were all older men than me. They'd all been around over 10 years. They all had families. They all had jobs. And most of all, some of them eventually they wasn't as knowledgeable as me because they had full-time jobs being plumbers and things like that. I was spending all my life reading the big book and, you know, working with people as a job day in, day out. So eventually I was kind of superseded them with knowledge. Didn't stop me phoning them because they loved me. And they would help me figure out what God was saying to me and what I should do next, and what I should. They would reflect back to me what I needed to look at in myself. And so again, you've got to kind of look past their issues. What the important thing is, are they mirroring back to me what I need to change in myself? And based on that criteria, Val, I would say that sponsor did that today, didn't they? They mirrored back how angry and how judgmental you are today. You see? So that's the important thing to learn, isn't it? It's about a good sponsor is a mirror, not a mirror for you to stare at and try and change. They're a mirror that you can look back at yourself. And what do I need to change in myself? Do you understand?
This journey to God, and you know, appreciating the light that we can walk in today. Do you experience that as being happy, joyous, and free? Do you always feel good, or you know, what's your experience on that stuff?
Question.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's been a happy, joyous, and free. I mean, I don't, you know, like most people say, I expect to be happy, or I'd like to be happy, but kind of let that goal go quite a few years ago. I don't kind of put my sobriety, my spirituality in on the condition that I'm happy or not. In actual fact, I've kind of learned over the years that not to place too much over importance on how I feel anyway, because my feelings are fickle. And honestly, when people say, how do you feel? I kind of want to respond, and this is just for the purpose of understanding, is about what? You know, I feel really bad about that. I feel really good about this. I feel mediocre about that. I don't know what I feel about that. And so, you know, I kind of like for the overall. I kind of like to go for the overall experience that I've had in my life is amazing and wonderful and still is. But whether has it been painful? Yeah, it's painful dealing with yourself. You know, no wonder nobody really wants to do it. And again, if I could have found a way to sort of stay sort of dysfunctional without feeling the trauma and the difficulty of it, I probably would have. But you know, I find that I don't really, I wouldn't really explain dealing with yourself and doing this program and trying to address some of these problems. It is quite painful. But what I do know is when I'm willing to work through that painful experience without trying to relieve myself in the ways that are not really healthy for me, whether it be with drugs or alcohol or people or, you know, food and other things that we do. And again, nobody can claim perfection to doing, you know, this program or any other program. But I would say, you know, the feeling of happiness, which I know it to be. I mean, I don't get that very often, you know. Joy, I do have a deep sense of joy and a peace that I find that's deep. But you know, being happy, joyous, and free, probably when you think about put that into the context of addiction and being a drug addict and alcoholic, then when I put it in that context, then absolutely, whenever I think about being in what it's like to be an alcoholic and a drug addict and to be in recovery, I absolutely 100% feel happy, joyous, and free. But now put that into the context of life, then they wouldn't be my first three choices of words to use. But it doesn't mean it's a bad experience, just life can be tough. But, you know, again, if I just want to be happy, I mean, wanting to be happy all the time is pretty immature. It's pretty unreasonable. Because, again, that means, again, you're going to try and control everybody in your life. So, you know, this idea of being happy, I think it needs to be, again, really needs to be talked about. Because if you're not happy all the time, maybe you think something's going wrong. And you're not going to get very far, I don't think, if you're just going to be around things that make you happy, joyous, and free. But again, I notice a lot of people say, "I just want to be happy," and you know, they say things, you know, like, you know, just do whatever makes you happy, or you know, live your best life, but it can become a very selfish, self-centered thing trying to be happy all the time. So again, it's a big sort of topic, and it's very hard to give a simple answer, but I think if we just keep it in the context of where addiction's concerned, always happy, joyous and free. Where the rest of life's concerned, it's up and down, and it's a little bit of everything. But again, I think that's normal. I have quite a high range of emotions now, and I don't choose to escape the difficult ones anymore. I actually have found a lot of beauty in that, and a lot of love in that, and a lot of humility in that, and a lot of the, you know, the real pearls of life experience I've actually found. You know, I like using this picture, actual fact, is like, if you imagine that at the bottom of the ocean, there's a treasure chest. And inside that treasure chest is everything that you want in life, that everything that a human being would want is in that treasure chest at the bottom of the ocean. Now, what I learned was when I was on top of the ocean growing up, that as I tried to get near the things that a person would want in life, as I started to get nearer that treasure chest, I couldn't stand the pressure. I just couldn't stand the pressure. And if I keep going, I'd eventually explode. And so eventually I would sort of say, well, you know what, I'll just stay on top of the ocean, and I'm not going to try and get the things that I want in life that are in the treasure chest, because I can't stand the pressure. So then I start designing other things that are that you know, that are not the things that you'd really want in a healthy life. But then coming into the fellowship and into my faith, that they sort of said, look, the way to the bottom of the ocean is to build a container. And through getting good sponsorship, good advisors to work in the program, helping to get rid of as much self as I can, having good people around me, and having a good spiritual belief, it's kind of given me a container. And now in that container, I can go to the bottom of the ocean, and I can stand the pressure, and I can enjoy them relationships and all of them things that I just, even now, I honestly believe if you took away my container, I'm going to explode. I can't afford to be without my container. When I'm not contained, I'm a crazy, piss your pants, angry, violent, aggressive alcoholic. So, you know, it's not about me, it's about the container. And that's what we've been trying to help you guys build, is something that's a container. I can't be free from this completely. It says I get a reprieve depending on the maintenance of my spiritual condition, but my spiritual condition is the container that allows me to be able to stand the pressure, because life is a lot of pressure, isn't it? Nobody can deny that, but I can stand it. I sometimes feel crushed by it, but you know what, I can stand it. And when you read the spiritual books, they kind of talk about like being purified. It's like gold. When they first get gold out of the ground, it's full of all impurities. So what they do is they heat it up, and then as all the impurities rise to the surface, they wipe them off, and then it cools down again, and they heat it up, and all the impurities come to the surface, they wipe it off. And you know, a not so pretty picture is, I say, how'd you get the pus out of a spot? Well, you put a bit of pressure on it. So I think that's what life is. But I think when you haven't got a program, it's sad, because you get all the pressure, but you never get the sludge wiped off the top. So when you calm down, all of the sludge goes back in to the metal, and it's a wasted opportunity. Having problems in this world without a program is like a wasted opportunity. So people that just keep having problems without a program, the sludge comes to the surface, and then they shoot it around everywhere, and then they all calm down, and the sludge all goes back down again. And it's like, what a wasted opportunity. When you got a program, the sludge does come to the surface. You might shoot it all around, but you wipe some off, and then you become a little bit more purified of that dysfunction and that self. So if you're not in that process, you're going to get heated up anyway. So the sludge is going to come to the surface, but that's not a bad thing. It's kind of what you want to happen. You want the sludge to come up, but you want the program to wipe some of it off, and then it goes down again. And so that's what a spiritual program is, in my experience. So I hope that answers that question.
Hi, basically what I wanted to know was, how do you deal with people that don't like trust you? Like, I'll give you an example. The other day when my mum come to drop a package off, I stumbled out of the door and she goes, "Come in, let me smell your breath." And I was like, "You can't smell crack, Mum. I'm not drinking." And I got really angry with her. And she's done that a couple of times to me before. And like, when I've gone to like, say my friend, "Oh, lend me 20 quid to get a curry." And she's like, "Are you getting a curry? Are you not getting a curry? I'll buy you curry." And I'm thinking, how do I deal with that? Because I'm starting to get really, really angry. And I'm thinking, well, fuck them. I might as well just use them. They all think I'm using them. And I'm like, no, don't be stupid. And then it's like, bothers me for the rest of the day. My anxiety gets really like het up and everything. And it makes me want to thinking about using the thing, and all these people they're not trusting me. Some are they are getting quite good, but my mum, just with the other day when I tripped, and she's like, "Let me smell your breath," and I was like, "I can't come close to you, mum." And she's like, and I was like, "You can't smell crack," and got all angry with her. And I'm thinking, how do I deal with that? How do I cope with that? How long is this going to last until people are going to start like trusting you?
If Rachel, I understand. If you reverse the role, and you knowing you and your behaviour and the way you was living up to that point, would you trust you?
No.
There you go.
I know I wouldn't, but I get so angry.
I know. Again, it is a difficult thing, but again, it's also a bit selfish what you're asking of them, because they're frightened and they you haven't got no past that says you're trustworthy. If I know people in recovery is like, they kind of want you to just believe them, but if we actually based it on facts, then the right thing to do is to not trust you. So that will take a bit of time. And again, a good program, if you were working a good program, you would let them have that. You'd let them not trust you and say, "Do you know what? Don't ever think about it again. I'm just going to do the right things. I'm going to try and not be selfish." I think Kelly's mum said a good one that I thought was a really simple way that she knew. She said, "Look, I knew Kelly had changed." I hope Kelly don't mind me telling this story, but it's such a simple explanation. She said, "I knew Kelly changed the day that we went for a coffee. She was in rehab. We went for a coffee and we bought a cup of coffee and a cake." And she said, "I knew Kelly had changed because Kelly paid for it."
Oh.
Right? So I think you never have to say that again. All you have to do is let them have that, because again, it's not really bad that they did it. And I know you want that, but the program says if you just focus on working a program, eventually they will start to see and they will start to trust you based on your actions, not just on your good intentions. Because again, you're a good person, you've had a lot of good intentions, but your actions haven't always backed that up. Now, forget about the good intentions and just keep doing the good actions. And it can take up to 4 years for them to go, "Do you know what? For the last," it gets better all the time, but they're going to go, "Do you know what? Rachel, give me some money. The things that Rachel did in the past, she's not doing anymore, and she's getting consistent with it." And then they learn to trust you. But I mean, it's one of the funny things in people come up to me and say, in early recovery, "Do you trust me?" I'm like, "No, I don't. Your mum don't even trust you. I'm not going to trust you."
Yeah.
You ain't earned that. Earn the trust. You earned the distrust, didn't you? So if you've earned the distrust, you're going to have to earn the trust, and that's part of the program. But just keep doing the right thing and start taking some shopping around their house and start giving them 20 quid. Eventually, they're going to see something's changed in you. You understand? It's what makes the program fantastic. And in actual fact, that's a good place to finish, because tomorrow Ricky is going to talk about making amends. in the group tomorrow. So I'm pretty sure he's going to show our work in the program turned it all around. But I don't have to ask people to trust me. They can do that based on my actions, not on my words. So just give it some time, but it does hurt your feelings, but just, say, you know what, I love you. If you want to smell my breath, if that's going to help you feel comfortable, then I'm happy with that. I understand. You've got to start giving them now. You've been taking a lot. Now it's your turn to start giving them.